Greetings and welcome to Retention Chronicles, the podcast with learnings from expert e-commerce brands and partners. I'm your host, Mariah Parsons. If you're here, you're either on a quest for e-commerce enlightenment or you accidentally clicked the wrong link. Either way, I am thrilled you stumbled into our corner of the internet, and I hope you'll stick around. We've got pearls of wisdom for everyone, whether you're running a multi-million-dollar business or simply just starting out on your entrepreneurial journey. Before we unleash the brilliance of today's guest, let's give a shout out to our podcast sponsor, Malomo. Malomo is so much more than just another Shopify app. They're post-purchase wizards, making beautiful and branded order tracking smoother than a jazz solo, so our amazing founders, like our guests, can keep their customers happy and up to date while they track their orders. So hit that subscribe button, like it'll increase your LTV overnight, and go listen to our other episodes at gomalomo.com. That's GOMALOMO.com. Get ready for insights, chuckles, and perhaps a profound realization or two with this newest episode of Retention Chronicles. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Retention Chronicles. Psyched for this episode here today. Matt, thank you so much for joining. A little bit of background for our audience members. We met at Shop Talk this past year. So we're recording in late May, and we met in late March. So it's been about 2 months and a quick couple of months with that. So excited to have you on. Thank you for making the time. And I'm going to pass the mic over to you to give an intro and say hi to our audience.
Yeah, thanks, Mariah. Awesome, meeting you in Shop Talk and then just recapping our events. Holy, that seems like last
so
week.
Much.
And then all of a sudden I fit in the Whaleys there in April. And then when we found out that we were both podcasters, it just seemed it made a lot of sense to hop on something a little bit more marketing related. I usually do things Packers related, living in Green Bay here. But yeah, when I can cross over something a little bit more strategic in career driven, it makes a lot of sense. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I love it. Give your podcast a shout out for those who are also sports fanatics.
Yeah, Pack a Day podcast, 365 days a year, an episode comes out. Right now we are in the OTAs, so 90, the 90 team rosters here in Green Bay Monday this week. That was rookies came in. So yeah, check out Pack a Day podcast if you're a Packers fan. A lot of great people that work on it, and any support on any of the platforms where you would already subscribe, please do so. And you can follow me on Twitter if you want to. I'm sure I'll plug it at some point, but at Matt_Frey_, that's at MATT_FRA_. About 90% football takes, 10% work. So if you need that balance, feel free.
You still get a little bit of it.
A little bit.
Yeah.
The engagement though is just terrible when I'm talking about D2C stuff, media buying. My audience is like, what the hell is this guy even talking about? We're looking for
they're
hot
did
takes
someone
on the
hack
schedule.
your account?
They have no clue. They have no concept. It's hilarious.
I love it. Love it so much. Okay, so Shop Talk. I can't even remember, honest to God, if I gave a recap.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, long time ago. But my overall take was this year was I just got to meet a lot of people outside of our normal partners, which was great. So I don't know if you have a semblance comparing Shop Talk and the Whaleys, because I haven't gone to the Whaleys, but a brief boilerplate of how would you kind of break down the two comparisons? Because I know the Whaleys is, they have their award component of it, their recognition component. So how would you, if one of your listeners, one of your podcast listeners was trying to understand and wasn't in the D2C world, what would you kind of tell them to, I guess, give them a summary of both conferences?
That's a good framing. So they're very different. I expected it to be, some parallels. I would say the biggest parallel was just the happy hour and the social aspects of what came along. But one's in Las Vegas, so you're basically Ubering everywhere. I like to walk a lot of places, so that's kind of out of the realm. We're in New York City. I was able to do that a little bit more. Shop Talk in Vegas, I was with 3 people that I work with, our CEO, COO, and VP of partnerships. In New York City, I was on my own. Thankfully, they happened to that rotation because I would have been there with not knowing anyone. So I had met some really awesome people through Shop Talk that you and I also had met. and was able to link up with it and kind of ride their coattails a little bit. Hey, I'm going to be at this event. Okay, me too. Cool. I have someone to connect with. But like as far as the event goes, Shop Talk was basically a whole week. The Whaleys were like 2 days, maybe a day and a half if you really kind of boil it down. Um, and I would say Shop Talk, I didn't go to the event per se. We were kind of on the peripheral where I had met you a little bit more, where our CEO and COO went into those like higher level conversations to pay to play be about conversations. But I would say equally like just fascinating the people you meet along the way. Like I met at one point in a elevator. I forgot the name of is it Shoe Palace? I think it is the VP
Mm.
of like marketing there. I ended up talking to him real quick in an elevator. Like I have a friend in Green Bay that's really, really into sneakers, but also is a artist that like repurposes the boxes and makes art out of them. So like
Cool.
sent him his IG, elevator conversation, see you later. And I think they ended up connecting. So just like the environment you're in on both events, it's like even in New York, meeting these people that are just like, oh, I've followed you on Twitter for a long time. We interact. And it's like, okay, yeah, we're like on the same page, both going through the challenges, traveling, all of this. And I would say they were very different, but definitely had like their small little pockets of like still finding people in the industry that you normally wouldn't be able to see come across and you recognize them through Twitter or a podcast or some seminar they've done, and it's just cool to connect. But yeah, being able to be one in Las Vegas with my whole team and then like New York City on my own was kind of a cool adventure, and just navigating that city on my own, navigating from Newark airport to basically getting out of Penn Station, which I didn't even realize was underneath Madison Square Garden, was a whole other
Yep.
thing, but that was good. My fiance, thankfully, she lived in New York City for like 4 or 5 years, so she was able to give me the cliff notes on how to get around and stuff. But it was fun. It was a great time, and they go by so fast, and come home with all this new energy and these new connections, and diving right back in is always a fun challenge, but rewarding.
Yes, yeah, I love that. I think I mentioned to you that I'm from New Jersey, born and raised
Yep.
there. So those are my old stomping grounds of the Newark airport and yeah, going into the city and taking the train and all that all that fun stuff that you get to unravel while you're there. Um Also wanted to ask because this is a little bit more of a opinionated question, but you had physical business cards, which a lot of people don't
I
carry
did.
around these days. So, what's
Yes.
your take, just real quick, on like, I think Popple is the app that people can use, right? That you can quickly share information. A lot of people obviously do the social media connections versus having a physical business card. So, what's your take? What was your inspiration for
I've
bringing those to the conferences?
I've evolved, honestly. Like, not even evolved. It's kind of like goes in like swings, like peaks and
Mm-hmm.
valleys. So like when I started finally getting into more of a career-based role, like in marketing years and years ago, like physical business cards were more of a thing in Green Bay, like smaller agency, and I had them just to have them. But when we went to Shop Talk, Lolita, our CEO, was like, "Hey, I got you a bunch of business cards because like I know you're going to want to connect with people on Twitter or LinkedIn, but like just having those is important." And I thought it definitely paid off. I feel like because there was a few evenings where they got long days, and all of a sudden you're meeting up with people. And I remember like a happy hour we were at like across from the Bellagio, and there's a ton of people on the patio on the deck, and it was like business cards were flying around. I'm like, that's great because at least I can wake up in the morning and be like, I followed this person on Twitter. Here's the business card. It's kind of, or if I forgot and it just slipped into my wallet, I could go back on it. I kind of think it's necessary to have both. I think that my favorite thing was like um, I kind of default, here's my card. What's your LinkedIn? Let me follow you there. So it's like a couple touch points. And I think that kind
Mm-hmm.
of goes back to just like marketing in general, like multiple touch points to get people connected. I'm very bad at like, I follow someone on Twitter, completely forget that we're connected until I go and do like kind of like an audit of my Twitter follows. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right. I did connect with this person and I should be DMing them. So if there's a couple different points, I think it helps a ton. And some people don't, maybe you follow them on LinkedIn and Twitter and they don't really post, so they just
Mm-hmm.
be kind of come a part of your follower list without knowing. So yeah, I don't know. I think the it's cool to like pass out the business card, but I know definitely some of those just get left behind, thrown in the trash. Hey, I'm leaving my hotel room. They're not coming with me. So as long as you have a couple different variations, I think it's important. But as much as I like to evolve and adapt with those things, like you talked about Popple and a couple different apps that are out there, there's something about like a physical business card that still kind of feels good.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Okay. I love it. I feel like that's something that a lot of people try and weigh, try and decide of like physical business cards versus virtual ones. And I like the in between of just having them both so you can cover
Right.
multiple touch points. Okay, now we'll dive into more of the e-commerce side of things. So thank you for entertaining my conference
Of
questions
course.
because
Of
it
course.
is conference season right now in e-commerce. First half of the year, and then everyone feels like everyone goes into hibernation for for Black Friday, Cyber Monday preps in the second half of the year. So give a quick summary or like a boilerplate of your background, how you arrived at Evestar. Yeah, give our listeners a little background. You've mentioned, your marketing experience. I think it helps contextualize before we jump into more of a strategy discussion.
Great question. So, I graduated from college like 10 years ago, and I thought I was going to get into like broadcasting, radio, TV production. Did all the internships in college, campus television, campus radio, had some internships in town with some sports, like little one-off TV channels back in the day. And it was like my last semester, and I'm like, man, I really don't want to go run a camera or work at a radio station for like 25K a year because the job I was working at Sherwin-Williams, working 40 hours, I was making more money doing that. I'm like, I'll just stick with that. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of found myself in this like went to school for something, didn't really apply it. I'm sure I'm the only person that's ever done that in the existence of academia and college,
Definitely
but
not. Mm-hmm.
got done. And after a while, I was like, okay, like this hasn't worked out. This hasn't worked out. Kind of need to lean into it, and just found myself having pushed my own marketing, personal branding, Twitter, LinkedIn, pushing some of my own podcasts, Pack a Day podcast, helping with some marketing channels there, and had built just by pure enjoyment and creativity my own following and at least how to do social organic marketing and the things that I enjoyed to do. So I was like, shoot, I should go get paid for this, and ended up losing my job. I was actually in Germany at the time and visiting my brother, and I saw an email come in about a company that was hiring in Green Bay. I was familiar with them, applied. I think we got back from Germany and had an interview with them and ended up landing the job end of January of 2020. 6 weeks
Wow.
later, as I'm getting into this new role, hey, you're going to work from home now. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And we have like six of us. So didn't really ever have to do virtual meetings. We needed to have a meeting. We were all in the office regularly. And like, that definitely was like my first like marketing job, helping with sales, helping onboard clients, kind of just like drinking from a fire hose. And then it was exponentially worse because 6, 7 weeks later, we're working from home and wasn't a big enough company to have to know how to deal with that. So after a while, worked there for about 2 years, was looking for a change, found a new agency that had reached out to me, actually out of Appleton,
Mm.
and which is about 30 minutes south of Green Bay, called Homestead Studio. Pretty well known in the industry. They've worked with a lot of big brands. And it was kind of like one of these things where I started working there, and I just never knew there was an environment or an agency like that around the area. And it just seems so unique to like just going into the office and just like, this is such a unique vibe from where I came from, my first agency role, to even other jobs I've had, to like, this is more of like a cutting edge, young people have worked for different agencies. People are from outside of, you know, the zip code, let alone the state, and worked there for a while. And then all of a sudden I got reached out on LinkedIn again. Lolita had reached out, had a conversation with them. I'll basically have a conversation with anyone for 30 minutes, whether it's recorded or not.
Mm.
And took the job there, wanted to take a little bit more of a level up within my career. And I've been at Evestar since about August, and it's been great. Been able to do a lot of things, a lot of travel, doing some partnership activations as well, which is kind of where we've crossed over. And it's been a journey, but I would say, even just to tighten up that answer, first agency was more like B2B, small local budgets, very, very small, to getting into the D2C world, which is Homestead and Evestar. And like seeing that has been opened my eyes up to like, wow, I can actually see what I'm doing on a L7, L14 30-day window instead of like this long tail working with a manufacturer. You're like, did anything we do in the last 9 months actually give you any more business? I don't know,
Yeah.
but my social media calendar was filled out good. That's good. So it's been fun to, it's stressful because you're seeing money in, money out, what that looks like, but it's also a lot more rewarding. And I think as Jonathan said to me yesterday, we were going through a conversation. He goes, it's a luxury. It's a blessing to have stress. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I like that. So that's kind of the evolution. So I've been in marketing for about a little over 4 years, but half of that's been the D2C space.
Love it. Okay, that was a very good summary. This is why it's so fun for me to interview another podcaster and it's rare that we get to have those who either have their own podcast or frequent podcasts. Usually it's the other side where someone for the first time is joining. They've never been on a podcast before. So that was a great synopsis of your background.
Good. Thank you.
And so let's dive into kind of what you're focusing at Evestar. As I've shared with you about this podcast when we first met and recently, we like to try and make especially our partnerships arm of the podcast as tactical as we can get so that brands that listen, they can, go and enact this strategy today if they wanted to. So I give the microphone to you metaphorically of take the floor and tell us about one strategy that you think is helpful for merchants to enact in 2024.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing we've kind of observed over, I would say after Black Friday, it seems like overall, and it's always great to have worked for a different agency in the D2C space, or even like not just working in, there's balances to everything. Like working in-house for a brand is great. You get to laser focus, but working for an agency is great because you have not only your book of business, 5 to 8 brands, but you have the entire one, and you can really look and be like, okay, this isn't just a Evestar issue, or this isn't just XYZ product issue. This is across. And I would say the last 2 Black Fridays have a little bit underwhelming. That's not even for our agency. We've had a few brands that have done really, really well. But even at my old agency, like looking back and talking to some friends that are still there, you can be like, okay, this is an industry wide thing that's going on. So I would say we kind of took that into inventory and just being more effective with spend. Like really, that's it. We had a lot of brands that we cleaned up their tech stack a little bit, tried to get more efficient with their email and retention sends. I would say even there's a couple brands, actually every brand, as we wrap up 5 months about, probably ran every single brand I've been on. We ran some cost caps within Meta
Mm.
just to get more efficient with their spend, because there's a lot of bloat that can happen in spend. You forget at times. I would say early on when I started, it's like, oh, I am running someone else's money, and that was even with like a couple $100 a month budget. And now you go back out and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm spending all of this money. And if I were just a little bit more tactful with it, a little bit more efficient, like that extra $20, $50 a day, $500 a day, $600, it can add up over time if you're not being a little bit tighter. So just overall efficiency. We've tried to clean up tech stacks for brands, which is difficult because there's a lot of brands that sign up for stuff, forget about it. That free trial turns into a subscription. That subscription turns into a year contract. Why are you even using this? So like just kind of diving in, rolling your sleeves a little bit with them has been important. And again, just overall efficiency. If we are, pushing them again, like the big thing within an agency, and there's so many different variables, but I would say a lot of companies you work with and brands you work on aren't as solid when it comes to the financials as I would like them to be. Coming from more of like a sales or a business to business background, like there's a CFO on most of the conversation leading it. There isn't really a lot of CFOs joining our calls. And like just to have that actual like accounting report is something I think we push brands to do, whether it be them putting their cogs in triple whale that are like, hey, how how firm are these? Like, are these solid? Do you have a separate spreadsheet you're working off of? Okay, I'd really like you to kind of, for lack of a better term, get a little naked, get a little vulnerable so we can actually look at what's going on. Because if you tell me this ROAS is good, but then on your back end you're manipulating it, so you're not to be malicious, but you're not showing us what's going on. Like, how do we know how good we're doing? So I would say just overall, just efficiency has been a big thing we've worked on. Maybe you're not trying to scale at this point during this time of the year. That's fine. There were some peak seasons. There's some even just like macro trends. March through April, people get a tax return. Mother's Day sale, we have a Memorial Day sale coming up, 4th of July. But like between that, Father's Day, of course, but like it's really, really tough during the summer. So just being efficient early on, I think is important. So you can actually spend later in the year, because we've had brands that haven't done that well. So just overall efficiency is like the biggest one that I think we're trying to do the best that we can at.
So, okay, that's very helpful, a very comprehensive summary. So, would you say that you're kind of following the same cycle in terms of like your peak season per se, in the seat that you're in right now when focusing on um, ads and efficiency and making sure that you have enough money towards the end of the back half of the year? Then you're kind of gearing up for Black Friday, Cyber Monday the same way that the brands that you're working with are doing so, right? Like you're kind of using the first half of this year to plan and say like, okay, this is maybe I don't know if maintenance is the right word, but just making sure that you're looking at all the data of like, okay, Black Friday, Cyber Monday last year, even if it was underwhelming across the board, like what lessons are there still to learn? And then trying to apply that in the back half of the year, right?
Yeah, I think that's super. That's a good point. Like the efficiencies and the inadequacies. Like this is only going to be my third Black Friday coming up, and one was with one agency, one was with another. I won't say which agency or brand it was. There was a brand at one point, um, early November, just ran out of cash. They literally couldn't even run
Wow.
ads anymore, and it's like they weren't with us with that agency at the time. They weren't with us for a full year, but it's like you inherit something that you don't even know about until it's like funding runs out. Wait, we can't even activate this because you spent all your money. So it's like this
Mm.
first part of the year, let's make sure our pop-ups are getting people into our subscription list. Let's make sure whatever we're activating on an SMS standpoint, email, we're getting people, because that's like a really important thing to do is obviously get people once they get to the site. I'm getting cheap traffic with my Meta ads, TikTok, some, a decent amount of Google, but like if I'm getting there and not absorbing them into a list, like on the back half of the year, they're basically they're not worth anything to me. If I can't get them on a list, they mean nothing. Like those email lists are so important. We even have a brand that we just started with. I'll call it the first of the year that was in the UK, now also is in the US, and just like activating and growing that list. It's been phenomenal the last 60 days just to see we've exceeded their expectations because
Mm.
of activations on the list, pushing them to be like, hey, we're trying to be really efficient. We need a good offer. Like we can't just get people to sign up for your blog. They don't really care. Maybe that works in the UK and they'll defer to us because they're like, okay, you're the US market expert, which is somewhat true, but we're also a D2C agency expert. We know what people want. But yeah, using this time of the year that we're kind of getting into a slower phase, people are becoming disconnected, whether it be consumers or even operators. Like after Memorial Day, people have summer plans. People are doing things. Hey, let's carry the momentum from Memorial Day into a Father's Day, into a Fourth of July, and after that, it's like, okay, do we do a Labor Day sale? Let's start talking about Black Friday just to get, kick the tires a little bit more and shake the cobwebs off. But yeah, I would say the first half of the year, just being efficient to get people signed up and effectively using those dollars. And honestly, when it's a little bit more relaxed, not the Black Friday time, easier to roll up your sleeves. Like we're working on a brand right now that we're just launching a new website for them, helping with a huge CRO audit. Like what better time of the year to do it than right now? And we know historically it's a slower time for them. So let's lean into that slow time and not try to go crazy in May and June. Like let's use the slow time to our advantage. And there's never really a good time to blow up a website or reevaluate it, but like out of the 12 months, this is probably the two best to do that.
Yep. Yeah. So on that line of reevaluating websites and tech stacks and everything, do you find that when you're coming in and seeing, a brand has XYZ in their tech stack and this isn't proving enough ROI or doesn't have a big enough ROI to justify having it in their tech stack, my guess would be a lot of merchants and brands they're okay with, letting you all handle like the analysis part of it of saying like you don't need this, scratch it off the list, take it off, like, but you do need this. So that would be my assessment. Would you say
Yeah.
across the board that's pretty fair of like brands are more than willing to have someone come in, clean up shop, or is there any resistance, I guess, to doing that? Because usually it's like consolidation, I feel like, is the movement of 2024 of just making
Yeah.
sure attribution from the tech that a brand is using is clear and like not some, you know, untraceable or not too big of a window to maybe be attributed to other things that that are in your tech stock working with a specific platform. So what's kind of your I guess viewpoint on all of that?
Yeah. I would say there's a few. One is if you're going to get rid of something, at least it suggests at least have a suggestion of why, or not even a why. Like you're paying $1,000 a month for this. We know this software can do the same for $200.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Let's hop on a call and do that. You can't just say, just get rid of it to get rid of it. Because it's like, well, they had it for a reason. Now it's not to say that, especially in marketing and in what we do is like, I've been in agency life for 4 years. That seems like a long time. The different milestones that I've seen across the industry, where if I were working in a manufacturer or something more of like a blue collar role, it's like stuff doesn't change that much. Like there's a lot of the same practices. So like just because you have used this software for 3 years, more than likely there's another competitor out there that can either offer something better. I mean, we're seeing that across email right now. There's a lot of email noise out there that have, certain, I'll just speak on them. Like Clayvo has gone in a complete different direction. Their pricing model, they're bringing agency aspect in house. It's like, holy cow. Like, and Clayvo's like the staple. It's like, how are you going to navigate off that? Not that we're removing Clayvo from a stack, but like, if a client has an appetite to do that, we would guide them through that and help them. Generally, what I like to do is they get inbounded all the time. I have a client that will email me, forward me every single sales initiative he gets. He's gotten better at like scrubbing through them a little bit more because like I already get my own, but it's like, oh, this is a great one. He's usually on the cutting edge of stuff. So like there'll be updates to Clayvo. He already knows that we're like, he's almost sometimes the first to tell us because he's so good at it. They're like, okay, cool. This is something we have to activate. So I would say if you're going to offer something or say, hey, this platform sucks, this product, this SaaS product sucks, give them an alternative or say, hey, we're going to roll up our sleeves together. We're going to hop on with your sales rep and figure out how we can be more efficient. Because sometimes they're just not taking it, or they aren't taking advantage of the offers. Like that's a big part of it. All the time, even within Meta, they're rolling out new things. And if you new strategies or new components, just ask like, hey, you're rolling out this, anything we can test and get a credit for. Same thing with SaaS partners, like any new initiative you're trying out that we can get some credit for 60 days or whatever, doing it that way. The other one that's challenging is you work with, let's just talk about since August, like I've worked with brands since then, and there's still new tech that they have that they don't come on an onboarding call with a dump of a document of, oh, we use this for audience, we have this little plugin for our SaaS or this for sales for, like, they don't come with that. You kind of find things along the way, which is, it's challenging. I guess it's not as overwhelming as it could be if they gave you a list of 36 different plugins you have to dive into and figure out which one's the best. But generally you go real wide, right? Is this affecting my audiences? Is this affecting conversion? How is it affecting with my email send or my email optimization? Then you can kind of get a little bit more granular after that. But there's a lot of different apps out there, especially within Shopify, that you can save a ton of money on. And not that they're going to be there forever, but at least for maybe a cycle of a year, they're there. And all of a sudden, 2025, there's a new one fixing this other problem that you didn't know was a problem. But yeah, there's no perfect world. I've come to realize they don't come, an agency doesn't get a brand and the brand doesn't come with every piece of onboarding documentation ever. They don't come with all these logins. You kind of just figure it out along the way. And, but again, if you're going to switch them from something, have a reason. Maybe they're just a bad communicator. We've had a couple of those where there's like, I just don't want to work with these people because they suck.
Yeah.
Maybe their pricing model switches. They don't tell you. Like, there's so many different factors. You got to kind of lean into those pain points as we do. And we're kind of their therapists a little bit too. So helping them through that and figure out which is important. They might come to a call and you're like, what's wrong? Performance is great. They're like, I just got off a call with this person and I need you to hop on with me. They're kind of giving me the runaround. It's like, all right, let's figure it out. Let's do it. Send the Calendly link. We'll hop on and we'll fix it.
Yeah, exactly. I love that relationship of like you're not in-house, but you're still dealing with like the internal issues that brands face of, okay, I have to go hop on this sales call, or, I'm getting this marketing initiative sent to me, blah, 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 right? Like kind of assessing a lot of different areas that maybe wouldn't traditionally, if someone wasn't in the space, think
exactly
that, that's the role that you all are playing. So you mentioned, like with the Clayvo example of the updates that they're making to their platform, and then Meta is one of those other examples. So is there anything fun that you've seen Meta roll out that you would want to, share with other brands who are listening of, okay, like this is something new that they've rolled out, or this is something that they've hinted or declared that they will be publishing this soon that you're finding interesting?
Yeah, I've been trained in my D2C world to kind of be a little bit skeptical of Meta. Like,
yeah, I think most are.
I know. It's like new product, great. New offering, cool. I'm on Twitter and people that spend 10x the amount of budget I do as an operator will share a screenshot of something like this new update to Meta, the one I think of over the weekend, instead of it being from like draft mode, in review, processing, they now have a new status that's called preparing. Like, what is that? Why do we need that?
Why is it different?
I figured like review mode was in review. So it's like, that's not a tactical thing. I would say, I know there's a lot of stuff that they're rolling out with, like value conversion is starting to be a new thing. It's just everything's cyclical. I think back to when I started in the D2C world about 2 years ago. It's like, okay, we're the top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel setup we would have was one thing, and we would have 20% to get it dedicated to retargeting and different audience testing. And honestly, at this point, like Advantage Plus shopping campaigns are solid. Like if you're running a small enough budget, even if you have a big budget, like you should have a majority of it going towards their just even those audiences that are changing in there, they're updating all the time. Like I do a lot of just duplicate a campaign, relaunch, update ads. Less is more sometimes. In my early days, I was building out new campaigns and not hacking my way around and not doing that now. It's like you come across these different optimizations you can do, or these settings, and there's sometimes I'm looking, I'm like, this wasn't here 4 weeks ago. Well, Meta's not like sending me a pop-up every time and be like, hey, remember when you logged in May 12th? Look what's different now. And it's like you kind of got to go and like troubleshoot. A lot of what we do is kind of just sharing internally with all of our brands. I would say the big one too is just on Twitter, seeing what people are talking about. Some of it's BS, some of it's really, really valuable. But I would say just Advantage Plus shopping campaigns, them adding some different audience optimizations has been great. And there's just new trends all the time. Sometimes with the budgets I'm running and the brands I'm working with, I tend to not want to take so much of their budget to like testing different audiences and stuff. I would rather like what's working. Let's just push creative. Let's push spend. Let's push making sure that those 6, 7, 8 soft metrics are doing well. And then if we really want to get tactful, we can try this new trend I'm seeing on Twitter. Like I saw recently that people are talking about add to carts being a thing again. Optimization. Okay, sure, great. Everything sounds good in theory until you actually start trying it. And you're like, well, that was a waste of money. Back to kind of what I was saying a while ago. It's like, I don't want to just spend people's money just to spend it. I want to make sure it's effective. And if you're going to be doing something that's a little bit, to me, off the wall, I like to tell a client that, like, I'm not going to say it's like, you're the first client I'm testing this with, but it's like, no, I've seen some value on this. We've talked about it internally. I've seen it on Twitter, but nothing on Facebook that's like a huge groundbreaking thing. The biggest one has been the Advantage Plus shopping campaigns, but those are from a year ago. Creative is still some of the same things that have been consistent for years are still important. Yeah. Good creative, making sure that spend is being appropriately, positioned, proportioned out, diving in further. Where are my soft metrics, my cost per acquisition cost per click-through rate, some frequency stuff. Okay, those are good. You go to the website or you check Shopify or AAA and you're like, well, there's the inadequacies. We're driving people to the homepage. The homepage sucks. The collection page, like generally it's really, really difficult. I don't have this very often if I'm working with a brand for more than 2-3 months without some top creative, then I'm finding winners that I can then say, hey, there's my top creatives. Let's work on our destination. Rarely does it take more than a quarter to figure that out. Of course, I can get more scale and iterate off those, but like generally it's like, if I can get this click through it and this cost per click, kind of on you or us, depending who's managing the website to fix that. So creative still king, and just being intentional with your spends still king. I don't know what those next phases are for Meta. They're rolling out these new items, and I'm pretty skeptical because I get on a call with a client and the Meta rep's talking about something, and I'm just like, oh yeah, that's have to going to correct that after the call. That's not really a thing we do. And they all have these practices in theory. It's like if you're in college and they're teaching you this stuff, it's like, oh, this sounds great from a textbook, or this sounds great, someone that worked in the industry 20 years ago. Like, how does it actually work until you get into it? I would love some of these Meta reps to hop on a client call and go through why they're spending on a certain platform or something and give the value. They'd probably go back to the traditional, just set up conversion-based sales components, not all these extra layers of spending money just to spend money.
Yeah, totally fair. Do you feel like TikTok is putting more pressure on them to like ramp up their speed, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when the TikTok, I don't say the boom, but we saw, TikTok it still is an evolving platform. And I always kind of take inventory on, having a organic social, like got my foot in the door with social media. Like I'm always on basically every app. The only thing I'm not using right now is Threads because it's Threads.
Yeah.
But I'm using every other app because I want to see from an engineering standpoint and a functionality standpoint and a feature standpoint, which ones are adding things or removing things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the best way to like any business. Like if a business is like constantly doing this, they're not changing anything for a long time, you can probably sense like either they don't want to grow or they don't have the right people working for them. And I've noticed like, between some of, between LinkedIn, X, Facebook, and TikTok and Instagram, like TikTok is always evolving with something. Like, and I check TikTok probably once a day, like at night. I do that dooms scrolling at the end of the night.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yep.
there's a new feature, there's something new in there. Where it's like, I go on Facebook and it's not that new. Like, they're adding the dating tab, which is strange. I don't need that.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
do I want to know that Meta, it's now searching by AI? Not really. But like, I think I just look at like, kind of get wide and you look at which platform is evolving and adapting. TikTok, yes. Are they getting pressure from the Fed? Yes. Has that happened before from them? Yes, it happened. I believe back in 2021 or 2022.
Yeah.
I think I actually wrote a blog on it for my old agency. But um, yeah, that's. I mean, competition's great. Like, you never
Hmm.
want to have. Yes, they both have their main purpose. TikTok just keep you on there, scroll, scroll, scroll. Facebook is a complete kind of just an ocean of what it does, but like, can you keep your consumers on there for them to buy? TikTok does a great job, especially with TikTok Shop.
Hmm.
Facebook has that. It takes a lot longer to, when you've gone in one direction for so long, to like implement this new thing. But the pressure's been great because just even the support from an agency level has been way different the last 9 months than it was for my first 3 years. It's
Mm.
getting more touch points, you're getting assigned to people, their communication's better. um I think it's been great, but again, the competition is necessary, and I think it's something that we have to have in our environment. Otherwise, we're just so reliant on one platform as a media buyer, and that's never good. You want to have a variety, whether it's 80 15 5 spend. You don't want to have 100% on something, or just Google and Facebook only. I think that's a bad idea.
Yep. I also too, I'm also curious just from a operational standpoint of looking at all the different social media platforms, but then also understanding the cultures that are on them so
Yes,
that you can say like, okay, there's a brand that's targeting more Gen Z and the online shopper, which we're in e-commerce, so is most of the people that we're working with, they care about how people are shopping online. But
exactly.
just knowing like even Facebook versus TikTok of someone who doom scrolls on TikTok way more. They're probably way more comfortable with the idea of buying online and vetting a business through
Yes.
that platform rather than Facebook. Maybe they would see an ad and then go and search for that website and go off the platform itself to buy. So I'm an avid enjoyer of the platform myself, just to like see what other brands are out there and all these founders that are, making content around their brands. But the discoverability on that app is something that is I'm very in tune with, both as a
Mm.
consumer and then also working in this space. So I like that you brought up that you can see the features and like probably make a good guesstimate at least of, okay, how quickly are they rolling out the product, but then
Yes.
from the other side of how quickly is the culture developing in terms of what people are caring about, how to know how to market on those platforms because you're an actual consumer yourself. I think it's a very interesting time, I think, to be in the space, especially the ad space, just looking from an
Mm.
outside, third party view of seeing all the different ads that are being marketed towards me and kind
Yeah,
of like guerrilla marketing of, going back to billboards and trending and trying to find like that viral moment. It's a very interesting time.
definitely. And the last thing I want to bring up is like, when I didn't really run much TikTok in my old agency, the brands didn't have appetite for it. And there was a reason behind that, because it was a really, really poor acquisition channel. Got you good brand awareness. If you dropped a batch of ads, you might have one that would be solid for a week to 14 days, but then it would just fall off a hill, fall off a cliff. And now, like recently, it's actually become a really good acquisition channel. We have one client that actually, that's their best acquisition channel as far as
Mm.
just like efficiency goes, which is like unheard of. That hasn't been a thing for them for a long time, and all of a sudden it's just been there. And I think a lot of that has to do with your experience and mine, and just the TikTok shops and it being such a better tool to get people in there. Completely random, but it kind of aligns. Like, I think the way you're buying on TikTok is similar to like Temu, and people are
Mm.
very, very like willing to spend and gamble, if you will, on a really, really cheap product. And I know Temu's kind of been a polarizing item in the D2C world recently, but
Yeah.
like, if people are comfortable to put their credit card in on some random Chinese website, like they're going to do the same thing on an app, that they're going to buy something for cheap. And it's just this kind of like, I think, yes, could my information be stolen? Well, it might be worth the risk if I get this $3 pair of joggers that generally look like they're $50, but I'm going to get something cheap. And I don't know. I think people just, their tolerance for putting your credit card in on an app that they know everyone else is buying on is great. Or on Facebook or Instagram, like you said, the offer isn't that amazing. I'll screenshot it, I'll save it, I'll come back to it later, actually go to the website and fill it out, where it's just like it's still not as clean as it is on TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think there's something to be said about the bandwidth mentality or the bandwagon effect. That's what it is, of just like
Mm-hmm.
people knowing that other people are shopping, so it's probably
Exactly.
fine. Or, all like user information, right? And getting something cheap. But then there's also the other side of, you can see like all these product reviews of people telling you don't shop here because it's terrible
Yes.
quality, right? So,
Yes.
there's pros and cons, and you can't really dissect any of the TikTok or Temu experiences from both of them, which is good because you'll get a good understanding, I guess, of how the masses are shopping. With that, I'll wrap us up because I know we're a little
Okay.
bit over, but we just, we got caught up in it, and that's exactly what I kind of expected anyways. So, Matt, thank you for taking the time to chat with us here
Absolutely.
today. Super excited to get this one live. And maybe we'll be at an event soon enough.
I hope so. I've really, really you got me kind of having a little FOMO when we hopped on the pre-recording. I'm like, oh, you go to these events
Yeah.
in New York City. Then you brought up Shop Talk in the fall in Chicago, which is not far from my house, not far from where you live either. And it's like, dude, I just got to get. I'm going to be a father in about a week, so I'm just trying to get through that period, and
Yeah.
then come fall, hit the ground running again, get ready before you know Black Friday, Cyber Monday. But yeah, I'm excited to get to more events. Events are a blast, and it's cool just to meet a ton of cool people, and already like yourself, met some really awesome people that we're still in contact with. It's not like these people you go to a convention like, all right, well, we'll see you next year. It's not the case in the environment we work in, because we're all on our damn phones and always doing something. So there's always a connection point, whether it be with Twitter, LinkedIn, or a business card, I suppose.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Or doom scrolling on TikTok.
Or doom
There's
scrolling on
always
TikTok.
yes, yes. I'm glad you brought up that you're a soon to be father, because I meant to do that in
Yes.
the intro. But then we just
All good.
got to we were off to the races. So yes, very excited. Hopefully, we'll see. I think Shop Talk fall for sure going, and then maybe seeing some people in Grow, New York. Give them a shout out. But we'll be in touch about all of that. So it was
Absolutely.
great having you on.
Thank you.